Hey guys, I'm trying something a bit different today. I'm starting a new job in a few days and I'm going to have a lot less time to do music and videos and stuff, but I still want to be doing stuff on this channel. I thought I'd try something different where it's videos that are anywhere from like a few minutes to sort of 15 minutes, talking through what I'm doing, giving some ideas on stuff, giving some tips about mixing or writing, maybe even some reviews on stuff if people see anything they want. So this video is going to center around this part that I've got looped. This is pretty much just synths and samples, and this here isn't a synth or a sample. This is actually a free instrument from Heaviosity. I'm going to just show you what I've done to it to give you an idea of what I'm on about with changing sounds. If I take the effects off, this is how it sounds. That's it. And then put some effects on it. Changes it completely. I don't really understand synths too much. I haven't had the chance to look into them and learn how to use them. So I've used mainly presets and then added effects and stuff afterwards to change the sound of stuff. I'm going to play through this loop with everything on that I've done, and then I'm going to turn all the effects on the instruments and on the buses here off. Hopefully you'll hear the difference it's made, and then I'll talk through a few of them and show you what I've done. Hopefully you get an idea of what I was going for there. You can hear how it sounds now. This is still a work in progress. I'm going to turn everything off on the effects, and I'm going to turn everything off on the buses here and play it through again, and you can hear the difference. And then I'll run through a few individual ones and show you what I've done. Turn everything back on. I'm going to run through just a few things that I've done and show you the difference that it can make by adding effects simply after an instrument or after a synthesizer in this instance. What I'm going to do is start with the thing that changed the most in that probably stuck out quite a lot, which is this. If I turn the effects on this channel off, obviously everything here is going to a bus, which I'll get to in a minute. But if I turn everything off just simply on the instrument, it's obviously a difference in volume, but the main difference that I've made here is taking out all the high end. So I've done a cut here, obviously quite low, 300, so it's taking out all of this high end here, which sounds like this. So all of that like clicky stuff that you get from a kick, in this case it's obviously a synthesized kick, but all of that clicky stuff is stuff I don't want because it stands out way too much. And then I've done a little cut here just to take out some of sort of like the low mid that doesn't sound that nice. Then I have added this, which is the Devil Lock from Sound Toys. The reason that I've used this, if I turn it off and then on again, it just brings it back to life a little bit more. But it sounds better to me doing it this way than it does just changing the EQ before it, just adding a bit more of the high end into the EQ. It doesn't sound that good. Using this to bring it back sounds a lot better. And also this makes it stand out just enough that you can hear it, but so that it doesn't overpower anything. And the entire reason that I have this track going is to keep the timing, because when you have a lot of synthesizers, especially more sort of ambient stuff going, it does become quite hard to keep the timing for the listener. It's quite hard to keep the timing and like tap along to the song, which is what you want to do to a song. You want to tap along to it, you want to get into it a bit more. So by having this in the background really subtly, it doesn't stand out too much, but you can still hear it and pick it out, and it helps you keep that timing throughout this entire part. So if I mute it and then bring it back in, hopefully you can hear what I mean. And that's quite a good tip for music in general, is use something to keep the timing so that your listener doesn't lose their focus on it, doesn't have to sort of work to listen to the song and figure out where they are in it. That's quite a good tip for anyone just starting. I will go to the lead synth next. So this is obviously the main thing that comes in at the end that you hear more than anything else. If I turn the effects on the channel off, you can hear the difference there quite clearly. I've used an EQ, I use it on most channels just to clean stuff up. Using an EQ is the simplest way to change the sound. For this one, I have cut out the mids below sort of 375. So you're not hearing that at all in the mids. In the sides, it's not affected. Now you can experiment with this and see what sounds best. For me, it sounded better just cutting it in the mids. I've also boosted the sides up at the top end. That just brings it out a bit more and makes it stand out a little bit more. That's simply why I've done it. But if I take this out, it does make a bit of a difference to the sound. In a way, it kind of reshapes it, but it clears out that low end that I don't want, where I want the bass to cut through, but it brings out the high end that makes it stand above everything else. That's the whole reason that I've done the EQ here. After that, I have changed the sound completely by adding Decapitator, something that saying that word will probably get YouTube to remove this video, but I can't really help it because that's the name of the plugin. Obviously quite a famous plugin for everyone. I don't normally have the mix 100%, but for this, it sounded better. That's the biggest tip that I'll give you. Try stuff. Experiment with different things. Obviously, when you've got something like Effects Rack that's got loads of different stuff in it, it's really easy to do that, but there are different alternatives. These are some of the ones that I've got. I've got Effect Rack, obviously. Mixbox by IK Multimedia, not the cheapest thing, but sometimes you can get it cheap, or if you buy something else from them, you can get it included with other stuff, so it's worth looking at that. Unfiltered Audio Biome, if you keep an eye on the Plugin Alliance sales, you can get this really cheap. So I think you could get this for like $30 plus whatever tax is in your country, so that's quite a good alternative to Effect Rack if you can't get this. As I said in a video before, I managed to get Effect Rack for like $37 because of an error on a page. Anyway, I've used this to help bring it out even more, and distortion and EQ are the two things that help bring a sound out or sit them back in the mix more than anything else that I've found. So if I turn this off and then on, changes it completely. To my ears, it makes it sound cleaner, obviously, it makes it stand out more, but it makes it sound wider and bigger, and all I've done is add an EQ and a distortion plugin. This is just something quite simple, and just to show you that you can use free stuff to do it, this is Saturation Knob by Softube, free, which is the best price ever. So using that one compared to Effects Rack, there's obviously the switch here that you can use to change the sound. There's a lot of option in a free plugin and it sounds amazing. But just using that makes it stand out even more. If I turn the effects off and then turn them back on in a minute, you'll hear the difference it makes. So using either of those makes it stand out so much more. And it's just simple things like that that can change the sound of a song entirely. Finally, I'll show you the bass bus channel here because I've done the same thing on pretty much all of them, but it sounds really good on the bass channel. So if I turn this off, the only thing you're going to hear here is the bass rise, which is part of Voltage Modular by Cherry Audio. So if I turn it off and then turn it back on, Obviously, there is a volume difference. By using these 3 plugins, it changes the sound in a really nice way that makes it sit better in the mix. And the biggest thing that I've done is use Little Altar Boy, and I have tuned it to an entire octave lower. I've then added a tiny little bit of drive just to change the sound up a bit, just to add a different flavor. And then I've used the mix and put it at around 55-60%. By doing that, it's letting through the original sound, but also blending in the like newly affected lower octave sound. I experimented with this and it just sounded so much better when I put them on all the buses. So something, again, quite simple, just one plugin can make that much difference, especially if you use it on a bus where everything's going through. And then I've used EQ. This is quite a good tip for synths, is to cut out around this sort of area. Obviously, you have to listen yourself, depending on what material you're using, this sort of sound. But as you can see, this is only cut in the mid. I saw this from Nolly. So if I turn that off and then on, it takes out that low mid that just doesn't seem to sound that good. By doing that, for me, it brings out the low end. The bass sounds a bit cleaner, but it also creates space for all the stuff that you want to sit above the bass. It creates space for that to sit in where it's not getting overpowered by the low end, and it creates that room and that space in the mix, which sounds really good. Other things that I've done, I've cut the sort of low end that I really don't want. So just sort of the proper deep sub bass that I don't want to eat up too much headroom. And then I've done a cut getting close to 300, but only on the sides. So it's clearing space on the sides for all of the lead instruments, the stuff that's higher up that you want to hear more. Things like that, 2 simple plugins, an EQ and a drive that can change the sound of a song entirely. But it's things like that that make stuff sound better and can change the sound entirely. That's probably going to be it for this video. Hopefully this has made some sense to you and doesn't confuse you even more. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again soon. Have a good day.